You know the short, stubby guy at the gym who's way too strong for his size? If he's an S2000, his little brother would be an ND Miata. Today, I am talking about wheel fitment for the S2K's little bro. Enter the 2016 to present MX-5 Miata. With the obligatory Miata diss out of the way, let's talk fitment. A lot of JDM car makers seem to think that larger wheels equal better. They've taken classics like the Civic and Integra and progressively sized them up over the generations to be effectively mid-sized sports coupes. What happened? These cars used to run 14-inch wheels. Now the Type R comes with 20s. Instead of following in their footsteps, Mazda has stayed true to the Miata roots, basically a street-legal go-kart. Not surprisingly, people like to style their ND Miata a lot like the NA they had 15 years ago. Small wheels and extra meaty tires take these cars straight back to the 90s. Whether you're after a retro look with some 15s or want to size it up, we're looking at a little bit of everything in this guide. First, let's talk the basics that you need to know about your ND. You're rocking a 4x100 bolt pattern with an M12x1.5 lug thread, 54.1 centerboard, 92 foot-pounds of lug nut torque. Remember the glory days when small cars used 4x100 lug patterns? Well, so does Mazda. They decided to keep it at 4x100. Not a lot of stuff is running 4 lug these days, so you're not going to have as much aftermarket support. But here's the thing. Most wheels with this pattern are likely going to come in suitable specs for the ND because they're kind of made for it. So are you really missing out on much? The majority of our 4x100 will work on a Miata one way or another depending on the type of fitment that you are after. There are 20,000 4x100 wheels at the link down below. When deciding on aftermarket wheels, you'll need to figure out the size diameter-wise first. The factory sizes are really simple because, well, there's only 2 of them. There's 16x6.5 plus 45 and 17x7 plus 45. Aftermarket wheels typically stay with 16s or 17s, but there are also a crowd of diehard 15-inch fans, those who love the retro look. For width, you can go a bit wider than the stocks, but keep in mind you are not working with a muscle car or a big body Benz. 7.5 or 8-inch wide wheels are great when you don't want to roll your fenders or do extra work. 8.5 or wider is when you're going to consider having to roll fenders at a minimum. The stock offset is a 45. Depending on the fitment, you'll want to run something between a plus 20 offset and a plus 40 offset. Now talking real quick about 15-inch wheel fitment. They didn't originally come on the ND, but they've gained a cult-like following. Something about tiny wheels and huge tires suits the chassis well. It's pretty cool if it's done correctly, and unlike the OG Miatas, some special considerations come from the ND being a newer vehicle. For example, the ND has modern vehicle brakes, or at least on the 2-liter cars. If you live in North America and have a 2-liter, chances are you'll have to swap out your brakes to those from a 1.5 if you want to run 15s. If you live in other parts of the world, your Miata could come with smaller calipers capable of fitting the 15, unless you have an RS or NR-A trim level. Just because you have the smaller caliper does not mean you're in the clear though. This just means some 15-inch wheel models will fit. Due to the awkward design of the rear caliper, it is possible for the brake lines to interfere with the barrel of your wheels. Often, small wheel spacers are needed to give adequate clearance. So, we're going to look at a few 15-inch wheel options that are guaranteed to work, plus note any trickery needed to fit them. If you have questions about other 15s, our fitment experts can definitely help you out. First, ADVAN RG-D2 15x7 plus 30 with Yokohama ADVAN V 552 195 60-15 tires, 15x7 plus 30 in the rear, 195 60-15 tires, lowered 30mm on lowering springs. The wheel balancing weights are positioned to avoid contact with the caliper. Starting with some ADVAN wheels, RG-D2s fit with about 2mm to spare, which is a little tight in the rear. It's so tight, in fact, that the wheel weights had to be mounted in a particular location to prevent contact between the caliper banjo bolt and the barrel of the wheel. Not ideal, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to get the wheels you want on your car. Staying with a factory 7-inch width and dropping the offset from a 45 to a 30 brings the wheels out a little bit more than half an inch on this Miata. Not exactly flush fitment, but great for a daily driver. With a 60 aspect ratio, the rolling diameter is identical to the factory 17. You could play with this a little bit if you wanted an extra meaty tire or something a bit more low profile to lower your Miata more. Now this second example, some TE37 Sonics 15x7 plus 35 with Dunlop Dereza DZ 102 195 55 15s, 15x7 plus 25 195 55 15. Large caliper model, lower offset rear wheels, work without spacers. Good news, your favorite wheel, the world's favorite wheel, also works on ND Miatas and in 15s as well. Here's what 15-inch TEs look like on an ND2. This is an MX-5 NR-A spec, meaning it has larger calipers. How do they fit? Well, the lower offset rear wheels have a bit more concavity, leading to just enough clearance. The fitment on these is about flush in the rear and a little tucked in the front due to a staggered configuration. 16-inch wheels. This is the in-between size. With 16s, you can run some chunky boys for tires tires, but don't have to worry about doing any tricky stuff to clear the rear caliper. First up, NK PF01 16x7+35 Continental DWS 06 205 55 16 16735 DWS 06 205 55 16, lowered on eyebox springs, no modification needed to the fenders, no rubbing, no scrubbing, no BS. This is OEM fitment, essentially, but with the wheels spaced out a little bit. If you're after a hella flush look, this just isn't for you. With this car being lowered slightly, there are still no issues with rubbing, and if you just want to change up the look of your ride and not so much the fitment, this could be what you need. Now we've got some NK RPF ones, 16x8+38 with General G-Max AS05 225 50 16s. This is lowered on Goodwin progressive springs, no fender modification, no rubbing, and no scrubbing. Most of you looking at these wheels will want more performance. Stepping up to a 7.5 or 8 with a wider tire is a way to achieve this. This ND2 RF shows that 8-inch wide wheels fit this platform without much hassle. This one is lowered on Goodwin progressive springs, yet it has zero rubbing. No fender modification was required, and the overall diameter will be about half an inch larger than stock 17s, which could cause some concerns over a loss in torque. Because RPF ones are so light, the owner reports no noticeable difference compared to running factory wheels. You'll see a lot of Enkei and Koenig on these cars. Both brands cater to minivans, K-trucks, and small sports cars, so it's no surprise that they are so common on the Miata chassis. Plus, RPF ones are said to be a perfect match for the Miata, and I tend to agree. Now we've got some BBS RS's 16x9+19 Yokohama Ascent GT 205 50 16s with the same wheel and tire setup out back. This one is bagged, it's on air suspension. Aftermarket arms, modifications to the fender are unknown but likely sizable. We wanted to show you something a little different, so leave it to a Japanese build to do exactly that. We know the wheel specs for certain, but the rest is a little iffy considering we had to rely on Google Translate, which is not the most reliable thing. We'd have to guess that air leg change could only mean it's on air suspension if that wasn't obvious. The camber has clearly been adjusted to make the rear wheels tuck in the fenders, likely with the use of adjustable arms. Fender work or other body mods are unknown, but given how tight the fitment is, assume that you would need to roll and possibly pull fenders. He's fitting 9-inch wide wheels on the stock body after all. If you're looking for a contemporary look on your Miata, 17s add a modern touch to a car that otherwise stayed pretty true to its original form. 15-inch lovers might hate them, but they are a factory size after all. Work MEISTER S1Rs here, 17x7.5+35 A disc, PS4S 215/45/17 with an O disc but the same tire size in the rear, XIDA coilovers, wheels drilled for TPMS, front wheels have higher disc for brake clearance. If you want to run some MEISTERs like this car, be sure to get the A disc for the front if you have a 2-liter. With larger brakes, you'll need the extra clearance from a higher disc type. Again, we're not looking at hella flush fitment here, but the wheel is almost in line with the fender and no camber adjustment was required. The ND is one of those platforms where factory specs offer a good baseline of how to size your aftermarket wheels. No need to go overboard. Next up, one of the slept-on gems, the WEDSSPORT TC105X 17x7.5+30 with PS4 215/45 tires. The wheels clear OEM Brembos with the F face. These specs are more or less the same as the last. We wanted to show off some WEDSSPORTs because they are one of our favorite brands, plus they look baller on a Miata. The TC105X is a modern design from WEDS that accommodates large brakes and is super lightweight. The F-face will clear the OEM Brembos with no problems. They could probably also clear aftermarket BBKs, but no guarantees there. If you want to learn more about WEDS wheels and why they're so good, check out our full feature video, which is linked down below. Now we've got some ROTIFORM LASR 17x8+40 with Michelin Pilot Sport 4S 215/45 tires. Progressive spring rate lowering springs. We've of course seen a lot of JDM wheels, some BBS. How about some USA made, well, USA designed at least, ROTIFORMs. The LASR might not be a huge hit in the Miata community, but they are at least something a little different from the RPF ones that you'll see on half the Miatas on the planet. They're not as light as RPF ones, but they are lighter than stock, plus they give you a unique look. Aero disc wheels from ROTIFORM would be a cool prospect for these cars, but at the time of writing they're only available in 18-inch and up. ROTIFORM, let's make it happen. Fitment is not too much different, the go-to tire size for 17s being a 215/45/17, one size wider than stock. They give half an inch more poke than the factory 17. We're not talking Stancy Boy fitment, but they're good for a daily. This car's lowered on some progressive rate springs. There's no issues with rubbing, even with the fenders being largely unmodified. So let's bring it all back together here and wrap it up. What did we learn about Miata fitment? Unlike a lot of cars, the ND is one where the best looking wheels are similar to factory sizes, 16s, 17s, or downsized to 15s. There's a nostalgia factor that makes small wheels with chunky tires what you want here. 15s are a tight fit, so you should be absolutely sure your favorite design will fit on your car before you click that order button, being mindful of various caliper sizes. Otherwise, 16s have a lot more breathing room and can still fit decently tall tires. If you want the modern look, get yourself some 17s. If you have a Miata NA, NB, NC, or ND with aftermarket wheels, be sure to add it to our vehicle gallery. Any aftermarket wheels, even if you lifted your MX-5 on 20s. There you can show off your super awesome fitment or get inspired for a new build. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching this video. We appreciate it. As always, click the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment down below with what car you want to see us do a guide on next, and I'll see you in the next one.